That piece was written in 1994 by an American composer who is still alive. I want to pause on that for a moment because every composer we have talked about on this channel so far has been dead. Bach, Buxtehude, Franck, Vierne, Brahms, Pachelbel, Messiaen, all of them historical figures, all of them safely in the canon, safely past the point where anyone has decided whether they matter. Dan Locklair is not safely past that point. He is a living American composer working in the tradition of serious organ music right now, and the fact that most people, even most people who consider themselves organ enthusiasts, have never heard his name is exactly the kind of problem this channel exists to address. Welcome back to Pull All the Stops. I'm Jillian Gardner. Today we are going to talk about Dan Locklair, about what makes contemporary American organ music distinctive, and about why you should know his music. Dan Locklair was born in 1949 in Charlotte, North Carolina. He studied at Mars Hill College, the Manhattan School of Music, and Union Theological Seminary, a trajectory that took him from the American South through New York and back, and that gave him roots in both the church music tradition and the broader world of contemporary classical composition. He spent the core of his career at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where he taught for over 2 decades. He has received commissions from major American orchestras, ensembles, and institutions. His music has been performed across the United States and internationally. He has won awards and fellowships and the kind of institutional recognition that serious composers accumulate over a long career. And yet, outside the organ world, and even within parts of the organ world, his name is not widely known. That is a problem I want to address directly, but first let me tell you about the music, because the music is the argument. Let me step back for a moment and talk about something broader. The state of contemporary organ music, and specifically contemporary American organ music, because to understand why Locklair matters, you need to understand the landscape he is working in. The pipe organ has a complicated relationship with contemporary music. On one hand, the instrument has been the center of one of the richest compositional traditions in Western music, from the German Baroque through the French Romantic to Messiaen in the 20th century. On the other hand, the avant-garde movements of the mid-20th century, serialism, spectralism, minimalism, did not always produce music that was well suited to the organ. The instrument's attack characteristics, its sustain, its dependence on registration choices made in advance, these create constraints that some compositional languages handle poorly. The result, by the latter half of the 20th century, was a kind of bifurcation in the organ world. On one side, composers writing highly experimental, often listener-unfriendly music that pushed the instrument into sounds it was not naturally built to make. On the other side, a retreat into the historical repertoire. More performances of Bach and Franck, less commissioning of new work. A conservatism that served the instrument's past better than its future. American organ composers in the late 20th century navigated this bifurcation in different ways. Some went fully experimental, some retreated entirely into neo-romanticism, and a handful, Locklair among them, found a third path. That third path is tonal, but not nostalgic. It uses the harmonic language of the 20th century, dissonance, modal writing, rhythmic complexity, without abandoning the idea that music should communicate directly with a listener who is hearing it for the first time. It takes the instrument's history seriously without being enslaved to it. It writes idiomatically for the organ, understanding that the instrument can do, and building the music around these capabilities rather than fighting against them. This is harder than it sounds. Writing tonal music in the late 20th century required a kind of intellectual courage, a willingness to be considered old-fashioned by the academic establishment while simultaneously refusing to simply imitate the past. Locklair had that courage. So what does Locklair's music actually sound like? What makes it distinctive? 3 things. The first is rhythmic vitality. Locklair's music moves. It has a propulsive, energetic quality that comes from sophisticated rhythmic writing, irregular meters, syncopation, the kind of rhythmic displacement that keeps a listener slightly off balance in a pleasurable way. This is a distinctly American quality. You hear it in Aaron Copland, in Samuel Barber, in the jazz-influenced classical tradition. It is not European. It does not sound like Franck or Vierne or even Messiaen. It sounds like it came from a country where rhythm has a different cultural weight. The piece may be exchanged. The piece we are going to play today is a perfect example. From the very opening gesture, the rhythm is doing something unexpected. It pulls, it pushes, it surprises, and it does all of this while remaining completely accessible to a first-time listener. The second is his relationship with the liturgical tradition. Locklair writes music that is deeply rooted in the life of the church. not in a decorative or nostalgic way, but in the way that Bach's music was rooted in the church. The titles of his pieces, their occasions, their expressive context, all of it emerges from the liturgical year, from the experience of gathered worship, from the specific emotional and theological moments of the Christian calendar. The Piece May Be Exchanged takes its title from a moment in the liturgy, the passing of the peace, when the congregation turns to one another and offers a gesture of reconciliation and welcome. It is not an abstract concert piece. It is music rooted in a specific human moment, and that rootedness gives it a warmth and directness that purely abstract contemporary music often lacks. The third is his idiomatic writing for the organ. Locklair understands the instrument. He writes music that is genuinely difficult, technically demanding, requiring serious preparation, but that is difficult in ways that make sense on the organ. The passages that challenge the player are challenging because of what they are trying to express, not because the composer is indifferent to the instrument's nature. This sounds like a low bar. It is not. A great deal of 20th century organ music was written by composers who did not play the organ, did not understand its mechanics, and wrote for it as if they were a piano or an orchestra. The results are often unplayable or unperformable at the level of beauty they intend. Locklair is an organist as well as a composer. He knows what the instrument can do, and he writes music that trusts it. The Piece May Be Exchanged was composed in 1994. It is the third movement of a larger suite called Rubrics, 5 movements for organ, each taking its title from a term used in the liturgy. Rubrics is one of Locklair's most celebrated works, and The Piece May Be Exchanged is the movement most frequently performed on its own. The title refers to the liturgical passing of the peace, that moment in many worship services, particularly in Anglican and Episcopal traditions, where the officiant says, "The peace of the Lord be always with you," and the congregation responds, "And also with you," and then turns to greet one another. It is a moment of warmth, of connection, of the gathered community acknowledging one another as members of the same body. Locklair captures that moment in music that is simultaneously festive and tender. The opening gesture, which you heard at the top of this episode, is bold and rhythmically assertive. It announces itself. It has the energy of a room full of people who are glad to see each other. But the music does not stay at that level of assertiveness. It develops, it breathes, it has moments of genuine quietness and warmth alongside the rhythmic drive. The piece is a conversation between different voices, between registers, different characters of sound, in the same way that the passing of the piece is a conversation. It runs about 5 to 6 minutes. It is, to my mind, one of the finest pieces of American organ music written in the last 50 years, and it deserves to be heard far more widely than it is. Here it is. If that piece did what I think it did, here's where to go next. Rubrics, the complete suite, is the place to start. The 5 movements together give you the full range of Locklair's expressive world. The opening introit is grand and ceremonial. The Kyrie is searching and contemplative. The piece may be exchanged, but you just heard. The offertory is lyrical and meditative, and the postlude is one of the most joyful organ pieces written by any American composer. Full throttle, rhythmically exhilarating, genuinely hard to sit still through. Festa della Primavera, the Festival of Spring, is a later piece, equally accessible and equally idiomatic. It is brighter and more purely joyful than Rubrics. Less liturgically specific, more a pure celebration of the instrument and the season. And if you want to understand the broader tradition Locklair belongs to, find recordings of William Albright, Calvin Hampton, and Carson Kuhlman. These are American organ composers of the late 20th and early 21st centuries who are working in related territory, tonal, idiomatic, rooted in the church music tradition, and almost completely unknown outside of specialist circles. This is the problem I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, the organ repertoire of the last 50 years, particularly the American repertoire, is a landscape of extraordinary music that most people, even most serious music lovers, have never encountered. Not because it's bad, because no one has told them it exists. That is changing, one episode at a time. Next Friday on Pull All the Stops, Hymn of the Week, we are looking at Joyful, Joyful We Adore Thee, Henry van Dyke's 1907 text set to the theme from the final movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, a Princeton professor, a German romantic symphony, and one of the most recognizable melodies in Western music. That is a story worth telling. Subscribe so you don't miss it. New videos every Tuesday and Friday. And leave me a comment. Had you heard of Dan Locklair before today? And what do you think about the state of contemporary organ music? Do you seek out new pieces, or do you mostly stay in the historical repertoire? I want to know where you are. I'm Jillian Gardner. This is Pull All the Stops. See you Friday.